The bell, a discordant clang of finality, ripped through the air of the New York Stock Exchange, and Elias Thorne, a man sculpted from graphite and discipline, was already in motion. His world was one of numbers, of sanitized transactions, of forward momentum that never ever paused. His security detail, led by the implacable Marcus, formed a wedge around him. "Mr. Thorne," Marcus began, "the car is—" A high-pitched yelp cut through the din. "Hey, kid, stop!" It was a flicker, a streak of pale blonde hair and a bright red coat, moving with the impossible agility of a creature that didn't understand rules. A 7-year-old girl, her face pale but fiercely determined, ducked under the arm of a guard and skidded to a halt, her worn sneakers grazing the mirror shine of Elias's $1,000 Oxfords. She held up a small, battered leather book. "You're him," she panted, not a question. "You're Elias Thorne." She thrust the book forward, her small hand trembling. "My mom's sick," she said. "She said this is yours. And you have to help." Elias's breath hitched. He didn't see the girl. He didn't see the stunned traders or the flashing cameras. He saw only the book, its cover embossed with a single, faded silver leaf. He hadn't seen it in 25 years. It was a grave. It was a ghost. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble, stepping in front of Elias, his hand gently but firmly enclosing on the girl's shoulder. "Ma'am, you can't be." His voice trailed off as he realized it was a child. The girl winced but didn't budge, her blue eyes locked on Elias. "Please," she whispered, a word that shattered the sterile air. Elias, moving with a slowness that felt alien to him, raised a single, perfectly manicured hand. "Marcus, stop." He looked down at the girl. Her hair was neat, tied back in a simple ponytail. Her coat, though clean, was frayed at the cuffs, but it was her eyes that held him. They were ancient, filled with a terrifying adult resolve. "Where?" Elias said, his voice hoarse. "Did you get this book?" The girl's chin wobbled. "My mom, Anna. She's a librarian. She found it. She said it was yours. She said you'd know what to do." The world was pressing in. The flashes of cameras were now frantic. The murmur of the floor had become a roar. "Thorne! Who's the kid? What's the book?" Marcus, ever efficient, was already speaking into his cufflink. "Asset is secure. We need extraction. Floor entrance now. Alert the lobby." He turned to Elias. "Sir, we must leave. We can have the child and her guardian." "No," Elias said. The word was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a razor. He looked at Marcus, his eyes cold. "Bring the girl. And find her mother. Bring them both to the tower, now." He crouched, an elegant fold of his bespoke suit, bringing himself down to her level. The scent of rain and soap, so utterly out of place, rose from her. He looked at the book, then at her. "What is your name?" "Mia," she said. "My name is Mia." "All right, Mia." He took the book from her hand. The worn leather felt like a low-voltage shock against his skin. "Let's go." The journey to Thorne Tower was a blur of tinted windows and silent, high-speed travel. Mia was quiet, clutching her hands in her lap, her eyes wide as she watched the city streak by, a smear of gold and gray. Elias sat opposite her, the book on his lap, his fingers tracing the silver leaf. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He knew the first sentence by heart. "Elara says the sky is a story we haven't written yet. I think it's just a map of where we're going." He had been 20. He had been poor. He had been a fool. And he had been happier than he had ever been since. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low, furious monotone. "No, I don't know who she is. Yes, the asset is with Mr. Thorne. I want a full media blackout. I don't care what it costs. Find the mother. Her name is Anna. She's a librarian. Handle it. The penthouse was on the 80th floor. It was less a home than a statement, a vast expanse of glass, white marble, and minimalist furniture that cost more than a suburban house. It was silent, sterile, and offered a view of the entire world. Mia stepped out of the private elevator and her jaw dropped. Wow, it's the sky. You live in the sky. She walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing her small hands against the glass. Can you see my house from here? Elias didn't answer. He was at his bar, pouring a glass of water, his hand unsteady. The book was on the marble countertop, a stain of humanity in his pristine world. Mr. Thorne? He turned. She was still at the window, but she was looking at his reflection in the glass. Is my mom coming soon? As if summoned, the elevator chimed. Marcus entered, his face grim. He was not alone. A woman, frail and pale, leaned heavily on his arm. She wore a simple cloth coat and a scarf that couldn't hide the gauntness of her cheeks. Her eyes, the same piercing blue as her daughter's, found Mia and flooded with relief, then panic. Mia. Oh, my baby, what did you do? She rushed forward, or tried to, stumbling on the thick rug. Mia ran to her, burying her face in her coat. Mommy, I found him. I found Mr. Thorne. I gave him the book. Anna looked up at Elias, her face a mask of mortification and defiance. Mr. Thorne, I don't know what to say. She just ran. I was at the clinic just for a checkup, and she saw you on the news. The stock exchange. She just bolted. I'm so sorry. Elias studied her. She was sick, sicker than she was letting on. The checkup was a lie. He could see the faint blue shadow of a chemo port under the thin skin of her neck. The book, Elias said, his voice flat. It's mine. Where did you find it? Anna, clutching Mia, straightened. At the library, the community branch on 14th Street. We were sorting a box of forgotten donations. Things left in the drop box years ago, lost. It was at the bottom. It had your name. Elias. And her name. Ilara. I read it. I'm sorry, it was wrong, but it was beautiful. I read it to Mia. As a story. It's not a story, Elias said, the words colder than he intended. It was a plan. Mia piped up, her voice muffled against her mother's coat. She wriggled free, her face alight with the terrible, simple conviction of a child. It's a plan for a perfect day. She pulled a crumpled, lined piece of paper from her pocket. It was her own handwriting, large and looping. See? She marched over to Elias and held it up. 1. Breakfast at the Starlight Diner. Pancakes as big as your head. 2. Ride the wind on the water. 3. Ride the painted horses. 4. Give a secret to the stone lions. 5. She squinted. 5. Watch the city sleep from the top of the world. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. You and Ilara. You wrote it all down. All the things you were going to do when you had money. Elias stared at the list, his throat tightening. He remembered writing that. On a freezing park bench, sharing a single pretzel. Ilara's head on his shoulder. They were dreams. They were nonsense. My mom. She's really sick, Mia said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The doctors. They say she's tired. But I think she's sad. She loves the story of your perfect day. She reads it all the time. She took a deep, shuddering breath, balling her hands into fists at her side. So I had an idea. Anna's eyes widened. Mia, no. I thought, if I could have the perfect day, if I could do all the things on the list, I could tell her. I could tell her all about it, and it would be like a real story, and maybe she wouldn't be sad anymore. And maybe she'd get better. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the air filtration system. Elias felt like he was suffocating. He looked from the child's desperate, hopeful face to the mother's pale, horrified one. "Mia," Anna whispered, "you can't ask that. This is a stranger." "He's not," Mia insisted. "He's Elias, from the book." She turned back to Elias, her gaze unwavering. "It's just one day. That's all. But I can't do it alone. The list. It's for 2 people." She took another breath, and the question that had been building since the stock exchange finally came out, a cannonball of absurd, impossible hope. "Mr. Thorne, can I be your daughter? Just for one day? So we can do the list?" The sheer, breathtaking insanity of it struck Elias dumb. Elias Thorne, whose life was scheduled in 6-minute increments, whose every interaction was filtered through layers of corporate and legal buffers, was being asked to play-act fatherhood with a strange child so she could, what, magically cure her dying mother with a story? It was preposterous. It was an invasion. He felt a white-hot flash of anger. He was a billionaire, not a fairy godfather. "No," he said. The word was flat, final. Mia's face crumpled. It was a terrible thing to see, the light just extinguishing. "But what you are asking," Elias said, stalking over to his desk, "is impossible. It is a security risk. It is inappropriate." He jabbed a button on his intercom. "Marcus, get my car and call Dr. Alistair. Tell him I have a pro bono case for him. The best oncology team at Mount Sinai. Whatever it takes." He turned back to Anna, his checkbook already in his hand, metaphorically. "Your daughter is right. You are sick, and I will not have a child running around the city, bartering for her mother's health. I will pay for it. I will pay for everything. The best doctors, the best treatments, a private room. Whatever you need. It's done." He looked at them, expectant. This was how he solved problems. He wrote a check. He moved a mountain. He expected gratitude. He did not expect Anna to burst into tears. No. Oh God, no. "Mommy?" Mia ran to her. Anna swayed on her feet, her hand flying to her mouth. I can't." She gagged, a terrible, rasping sound. She wasn't crying. She was choking. "Mommy!" Mia screamed. Anna's eyes rolled back and she collapsed, a marionette with cut strings, onto the white marble floor. "Anna!" Elias yelled, rushing forward, catching her before her head struck the corner of the glass table. She was terrifyingly light. "Marcus, get a medic, now, now!" The next hour was a maelstrom of controlled panic. Elias's penthouse, usually a sanctuary of silence, was filled with the urgent, quiet footsteps of his private medical team, the crackle of a radio, the hiss of an oxygen tank. Mia had been guided to a separate room by a kind-faced woman from Elias's staff, and he could hear her muffled sobs through the thick door. He stood by the window, his back to the scene, his hands gripping the cold sill as he watched an ambulance, its lights flashing silently 80 floors below, pull into his private service entrance. He had seen market crashes, hostile takeovers, corporate espionage. He had never ever felt so utterly, terrifyingly useless. Marcus appeared at his elbow. "Sir, they're taking her to Mount Sinai. Dr. Alistair is meeting them there. It was a pulmonary embolism, they think, caused by the cancer. It's bad, sir. Very bad." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the tiny flashing lights below. "The child. Mrs. Davies is with her. She's hysterical, sir, asking for her mother." "Her mother," Elias repeated numbly. He turned. The penthouse was empty again, save for the faint scent of antiseptic and the crumpled piece of paper, Mia's list, that had fallen by the sofa. He picked it up. Breakfast at the Starlight Diner. He looked at the book, still on his bar. He picked that up, too. He opened it. Ilara's familiar, elegant script next to his own youthful, arrogant scrawl. The world is just a collection of days, Elias. But one day, just one, can be a whole life, if you live it right. So let's plan a life. Let's plan our perfect day. He closed the book, the old dried glue of the spine crackling in protest. He went to the room where Mia was. Mrs. Davies stood as he entered. The room was a guest suite, all beige and cream, impossibly soft. Mia was curled on the bed, her small body shaking with silent sobs. "Mia," Elias said, his voice sounding strange and rusty in the soft room. She looked up, her face blotchy and stained with tears. "Where's my mommy? Is she gone?" "No," Elias said, sitting on the edge of the bed, a respectful distance away. "She is not gone. She's at the hospital, the very best hospital. The doctors are making her better. You will see her soon." "You promise?" she whispered, her eyes desperate. Elias hesitated. He never promised anything he couldn't 100% guarantee. It was his cardinal rule. I promise that the best people in the world are taking care of her." It was a politician's answer, and she knew it. Her face started to crumple again. He had to stop it. He couldn't bear to see it again. "But," he said, the word coming out before he had even formed the thought. "We have a problem," she sniffled, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "What?" "Your mother. When she wakes up, you're supposed to have a story to tell her about your perfect day." Mia stared at him. "But you said no." "I was incorrect," Elias said, the corporate speak sounding absurd. He held up the crumpled list. "We have a list to get through." A tiny spark lit in her swollen eyes. "You mean?" "I mean," Elias said, standing up and straightening his tie, feeling the ground tilting beneath him. "It's one day, and it's a very long list. We should get started." He held out his hand. "Marcus is having the car brought around. I assume the Starlight Diner still exists." Mia looked at his outstretched hand. She looked at his face. She wasn't just a child. She was a negotiator, an assessor of risk. She was trying to see if he was lying. After a long moment, she scrubbed her tears away with her fists and slid off the bed. She didn't take his hand. She just nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice small but firm. "Let's go. But you have to promise to do it right. No phones. It's on the list." Elias blinked. "It's not on the list. It's an invisible rule," she said with a hint of her former fire. "No phones, or it doesn't count. The magic won't work." Elias felt a muscle in his jaw twitch. "Fine. No phones." He motioned for her to precede him out of the room. As she walked past, he saw her slip her small hand into the pocket of her red coat, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had just made the single, most irrational, and most terrifying decision of his entire life. The Starlight Diner, it turned out, not only still existed, it looked as if it hadn't been cleaned since Elias was last there 25 years ago. It was a long, narrow metal tube of a place, with cracked vinyl booths, a buzzing neon sign, and a thick smell of old coffee and frying onions. Marcus, who had driven them in a discreet, bulletproof sedan, looked at the establishment with open horror. "Sir, I cannot advise this. The hygiene, the security, it's a risk." "It's on the list, Marcus," Elias said, opening his own door. "Wait here, and hold my phone." He handed the slim, black device to Marcus. The security man looked at it as if Elias had just handed him a live grenade. "Sir, no phones. It's the magic," Elias said dryly. He stepped out onto the cracked pavement. Mia was already at the door, peering through the greasy glass. "It's real," she breathed, and pushed her way inside. Elias followed, the chime of a tiny bell above the door announcing their arrival. The diner was mostly empty, save for a few weary-looking construction workers at the counter and a waitress who looked as old as the vinyl. She ambled over, wiping her hands on an apron that had seen better decades. "Table for two, honey," she rasped, looking at Elias's suit with a mixture of suspicion and amusement. "Wherever," Elias said, sliding into a booth. The vinyl was cold and split, the stuffing poking through. Mia scrambled in opposite him, her feet dangling a foot off the floor. She grabbed the plastic-coated menu, her eyes as wide as the pancakes she was looking for. "Okay, what'll it be?" the waitress asked, pulling a pencil from her beehive hairdo. "Coffee black," Elias said, "and she'll have—" "Pancakes," Mia chirped. "The ones as big as my head. It says so on the list." The waitress chuckled. "You got it, Pixie. One order of the hubcap. And for you, Mr. Wall Street, you eatin' or just lookin'?" Elias looked at the menu, at the greasy pictures of eggs and bacon. His personal chef was likely just finishing a delicate egg white omelet with wilted spinach and truffle oil. I'll have the same," he said. The waitress's eyebrows shot up. "The hubcap? For you?" "He has to," Mia said. "It's the rule." "Okay then. 2 hubcaps. Your funeral, sweetie." She shuffled off. An awkward silence fell. Elias tapped his fingers on the Formica table. He kept instinctively reaching for his phone, a phantom limb twitch. "So," Mia said, "this is where you and Alara came?" Elias looked around. "Yes, we used to come here after our classes. We couldn't afford dinner, so we'd order 1 plate of pancakes and share it. We'd write in the book. Did you get the ones as big as your head?" "We couldn't afford them," Elias said simply. "We got the short stack. 2 pancakes." "Oh," Mia's face fell. "That's sad." "No," Elias said, surprised by his own words. "It wasn't. We were happy." Before Mia could respond, the waitress returned, carrying 2 plates so large they barely fit on the table. The pancakes were, indeed, the size of hubcaps, fluffy, golden, and drowning in a sea of butter and syrup. Mia gasped in genuine delight. Elias stared at his. It was a mountain of carbohydrates. It was his nutritionist's worst nightmare. "Go on," Mia said, already sawing away at the edge of hers with a knife. "Eat it." Elias picked up his fork. He took a small, hesitant bite. The pancake was astonishingly good. It was sweet, tangy from buttermilk and fluffy. He took another bite, and another. He hadn't eaten food like this, real, uncomplicated, unapologetic food in. He couldn't remember how long. He looked up. Mia had a ring of syrup around her mouth and she was beaming at him. "It's good, right?" "It's acceptable," Elias said, but he was already taking another bite. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "Elias," Mia said, her mouth full. He paused. "Yes?" "Was Alara pretty?" He stopped chewing. He looked out the window at the dirty street. "Yes," he said, his voice quiet. "She was. She had hair the color of this syrup. And she laughed all the time, even when we had no money, especially then." "Do you miss her?" He put his fork down. He had eaten half the pancake. I thought she was dead," he said, more to himself than to her. "For a long time, I lost the book, and I lost her, and I kept working. And one day I looked up and I was here, and she wasn't." "Oh," Mia said softly. She reached across the table, her small, sticky fingers brushing his hand. "That's the saddest story I ever heard." He looked at her small hand on his. He didn't pull away. "Eat your pancakes, Mia. We have a long day." The second item on the list was Ride the Wind on the Water. In 1999, This had meant the Staten Island ferry, the cheapest boat ride in the city. Elias, however, had Marcus drive them to the 34th Street heliport. "Sir, are you sure?" Marcus asked as a sleek, black Augusta helicopter settled onto the pad. "A helicopter?" The list said, "On the water," Mia said, looking skeptical. "It's faster," Elias said, "and the view is better. We'll fly over the water." "I don't know," Mia said, her arms crossed. "It feels like cheating." "Is this your perfect day? Or my perfect day?" Elias countered, a hint of his old impatience returning. "It's our perfect day," Mia shot back, "and it's from your list." "And you said the ferry." Elias sighed. He looked at the waiting helicopter, then at the traffic-choked FDR drive, then at the stubborn 7-year-old in front of him. "Marcus, take us to Whitehall Terminal." Marcus looked, for a split second, like he might actually weep. "Sir." "The ferry? With the general public?" "With the general public, Marcus." The Whitehall Terminal was a zoo. It was loud, crowded, and smelled of pretzels and exhaust. Elias, a man who hadn't stood in a line in 15 years, found himself being jostled by tourists, commuters, and street performers. Mia, on the other hand, was electric. She tugged him through the crowd, her eyes bright. "Look, a man playing buckets." "Don't touch anything," Elias muttered, his shoulders hunched, his hands deep in his suit pockets. They shuffled onto the massive orange boat, and Mia made a beeline for the outside deck, dragging him by the hand. The wind was fierce and cold, whipping his hair out of its perfect side part and turning Mia's cheeks a bright, healthy pink. The boat's horn blared, a deep, resonant sound, and the vessel shuddered, pulling away from the dock. "We're moving! We're moving!" Mia yelled, racing to the railing. She stood on her tiptoes, gripping the cold metal, the wind plastering her blonde hair to her head. Elias stood behind her, a silent, tailored sentinel, his suit jacket flapping wildly. He felt exposed. He felt the spray of the harbor on his face. He watched the Statue of Liberty, a familiar green icon, slide past. He had seen it 1,000 times from his helicopter, a toy on a map. From here it was majestic. It was real. "It's so big," Mia shouted over the wind. "She's beautiful." "She's just copper," Elias said. "Oxidized." "She's a queen," Mia declared, ignoring him. She turned her back to the statue and faced him. She spread her arms wide, like wings, and tilted her head back, closing her eyes. "I'm riding the wind, Elias. I'm riding the wind." She was so completely, purely joyful, a feeling he hadn't recognized in himself for decades. He watched her, this strange, brave, impossible child, and a small, painful crack appeared in the marble facade of his heart. He wasn't miserable. He was cold, yes. His suit was probably being ruined by salt water, but he wasn't miserable. "Come on," she yelled, grabbing his hand. "You do it too. It's the list." "I will not. You have to. It's the magic." She pulled on his hand, and he let her. He stood beside her, facing the skyline of his city, and he tentatively, awkwardly, spread his arms. He felt ridiculous. He felt like a fool. And then a gust of wind hit him, so hard it made him laugh. It was a short, rusty bark of a sound, but it was a laugh. Mia's eyes flew open and she stared at him, her mouth a perfect O of surprise. "You laughed," she breathed. Elias dropped his arms immediately, clearing his throat. "The wind. It's bracing." "No," she said, her smile so wide it looked like it hurt. "You laughed. I heard it." She turned back to the water, her small shoulders shaking. "Item 2. Check." The laughter died in his throat, replaced by a sudden, sharp pang of something. He thought of Anna, in a white room, tubes and wires. He thought of Ilara, gone for 25 years. And he thought of this little girl, who was trying to build a miracle out of pancakes and ferry rides. He looked out at the water, his face grim. He would see this through. He would give her this day, but he would not laugh again. The third item was ride the painted horses. This, at least, was straightforward. He had Marcus drive them to the antique carousel in the park. It was a beautiful, sun-drenched afternoon, and the park was full of families. Children screamed with delight, parents pushed strollers, dogs barked. It was a symphony of normal life that felt, to Elias, like a transmission from another planet. "This one," Mia yelled, pointing to a magnificent white horse with a golden mane and wild, painted eyes. Elias paid for the tickets, a stack of them, more than they could ever use, and lifted Mia onto the horse. "Which one are you going to ride?" she asked, patting the horse's neck. "I'm not," Elias said. "I'll stand here." "Elias," she said, her voice taking on a dangerously patient tone. "The list. Ride the painted horses, not watch the painted horses. It's a child's ride, Mia. It's a horse ride, Elias. And you're not my dad today, remember? You're Elias from the book." And he would ride. He sighed. He looked at the horse next to hers, a garish blue rooster. "Fine." He swung his leg over the rooster, feeling his suit trousers pull dangerously tight. He sat stiffly on the cold metal, his pristine Oxfords resting on the stirrups. The music started, a wheezing, cheerful calliope tune. The carousel lurched, then began to turn. Slowly, then faster. Up and down, around and around. Mia was squealing with laughter, her blonde hair flying. Elias just held on, his knuckles white, his expression stony. And that, of course, was when the cameras found them. It wasn't a mob. It was one at first. A man with a long-lens camera, half hidden behind a hot dog cart. He snapped a picture, then another. Then he must have called his friends, because within 2 minutes, a half-dozen paparazzi were jogging across the grass, their cameras flashing, their voices a low, predatory murmur. "Mr. Thorne, is that your daughter? Elias, who's the mystery girl? A secret family, Thorne?" Elias froze. This was his nightmare, the intrusion, the violation, the reduction of a moment into a salacious headline. Mia's laughter died. She looked at the men, her eyes wide with fear. "Who are they? Why are they yelling?" "Ignore them," Elias said, his voice a low growl. But they were pressing in, shouting questions. The ride slowed, coming to a stop. Before the music had even fully died, Elias was off the rooster. He snatched Mia from her horse, tucking her head into his shoulder. "Shield your face," he commanded. "Marcus." His security head was already there, materializing from the crowd, his broad body acting as a barrier. "This way, sir." "Get her out of here, Elias," one of the photographers yelled. "Is this why you're so private?" "She looks scared, Thorne. Great parenting." Elias felt a surge of pure, white-hot rage, an emotion so potent it startled him. It wasn't the sterile anger of a failed merger. This was primal. This was protective. He stopped. He turned. Marcus froze. "Sir, no, don't engage." Elias ignored him. He stood in the middle of the park, holding a terrified 7-year-old, and faced the cameras. His voice was low, but it carried in the sudden, shocked silence. "You will delete those pictures." The lead photographer, a weasel-faced man in a stained jacket, actually laughed. "Not a chance, Thorne. This is gold. Billionaire's love child. This'll pay for my boat." "I will pay you," Elias said, his voice lethally calm. "I will pay you 10 times what that picture is worth for you to delete it, and to forget you ever saw us." The man's eyes lit up. 10 times? Make it 50, and we've got a deal. And my friends here?" "No," came a small, muffled voice. Mia twisted in his arms, her face tear-stained but furious. She looked at the photographers. "You stop it. You're ruining it. You're ruining our perfect day." The photographers, stunned by the child's outburst, actually lowered their cameras for a second. "What did she say?" "She said," Elias said, his gaze locking with the lead photographers, "that you're ruining her day. And she's right." He adjusted Mia in his arms. "I'm not going to pay you. I'm not going to threaten you. I'm just going to tell you that this little girl's mother is very, very sick. And this day, this is for her. This is all she has. Now you can print your pictures. You can write your filthy, speculative headlines. And you can make your money. But you'll have to live with the fact that you stole this day from a sick woman and her daughter. Your choice." He turned his back on them. He didn't wait for an answer. He walked, with a slow, deliberate pace, back to the car, Mia clinging to his neck like a limpet. He put her in the back seat and got in beside her. "Marcus, drive." They pulled away, leaving the knot of photographers standing, motionless on the sidewalk. Elias looked back. Not a single one of them was raising their camera. He turned surprised and found Mia staring at him, her eyes full of a new, strange emotion. "Aw, you were like a superhero," she whispered. Like Batman." Elias just loosened his tie, his heart hammering against his ribs in a way that had nothing to do with anger, and everything to do with the small, warm weight of the child breathing beside him. "Item 4, he said, his voice still rough. "The stone lions. I believe I know the ones. The lions were at the library. Not Mia's small branch, but the grand central building on Fifth Avenue. Patience and fortitude. They stood guard, their marble faces serene and, well, patient." "Okay," Mia said, standing at the base of Patience, her head tilted back. "What's the secret?" "The list just says, give a secret to the stone lions." "It doesn't say what." "You and Ilara," Mia pressed. "What secret were you going to tell?" Elias looked at the massive statue. He remembered this part of the plan. Ilara had been obsessed with the lions. "They've seen everything, Elias," she'd said. "They know all the city's secrets. Except ours." We were going to tell them our real names," he said. Mia looked confused. "But your name is Elias." "It is now. It wasn't always. I was born Elias Kiriakou, a tailor's son from Queens. Thorne was my mother's maiden name. It sounded stronger, more powerful. When I went to college, I changed it. I wanted to invent myself, to be someone new. Ilara was the only one who knew that." "Elias Kiriakou," Mia tested the name. "I like it. It sounds like a musician." Ilara, her secret. She was going to tell the lion that she was pregnant. The world stopped. The traffic on Fifth Avenue seemed to fade to a distant hum. Mia's eyes went wide. "Pregnant? With your baby?" "Yes," Elias whispered, the admission hanging in the air like smoke. "We were 20. We were terrified. And we were excited. That was our secret. We were going to tell the lions, and then we were going to tell the world." "What happened?" Mia asked, her voice small. Elias sank onto the massive marble plinth at the lion's base, his suit jacket pooling around him. He hadn't thought about this, not in this way, in decades. I got an offer, an internship, a chance to build the company that became my life. It was in California. It was for the whole summer. I told her I had to go, that it was for us, for the baby. I told her to wait. I'd come back, and we'd be set. We'd have a start. And did you? I went. I worked 20-hour days. I got consumed by it. I called. At first. Then, less. I told myself I was busy. I told myself she understood. I sent money. When the summer was over, the internship became a job, a real job. I told her it would be just 6 more months. Then there was a fire. A fire at her apartment building. I read about it in a small news clipping. I called. The line was disconnected. I flew back. The building was a ruin. The neighbors said. They said she was gone. That she hadn't made it out. I believed them. It was easier to believe that than to believe that she had simply left me. He looked at his hands. I never looked for her. I never went to the police. I grieved. And then I built my company. I built my fortune. I built this as a monument to her, to what I'd lost. I told myself it was what she would have wanted. That's the lie I've been telling myself for 25 years. He had not meant to say any of that. It had just poured out of him. He looked at Mia. She was watching him, her small face unreadable. She wasn't horrified. She wasn't sad. She was thinking. She walked up to the lion's massive paw. She stood on her tiptoes and cupped her hand around her mouth, pressing it close to the cold marble ear. She whispered something, her words lost to the wind. Then she turned back to Elias. "What did you tell it?" he asked, his voice thick. "I told it your secret," she said, "the one you just told me. So it's safe now." She walked over and for the first time she initiated the contact. She climbed up onto the plinth beside him. She was small, but the warmth from her small body radiated through the thick wool of his suit. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, her shoulder pressed against his arm. And for the second time that day, Elias Thorne felt a crack in his armor. He wasn't just cold. He was lonely. He was so desperately lonely. And he hadn't even realized it until this small, sticky, brave child sat next to him and shared his silence. "Okay," Mia said after a long time. She hopped off the plinth. "One more. Item 5. Watch the city sleep from the top of the world." "That," Elias said, standing and brushing off his suit, a gesture of returning to himself. "That I can provide." He thought, of course, of his penthouse, the 80th floor view, the top of the world as he knew it. But as the car sped uptown, a different feeling settled over him. A wrongness. They pulled into the private garage, and the silence of the marble lobby wrapped around them. They rode the private elevator up, the hum of the motors the only sound. They stepped out into the vast, empty penthouse. The sun was setting, and the city was ablaze with a fiery, heartbreaking orange light. The view was, by any definition, perfect. "Wow," Mia said, but her voice was small. It didn't have the ringing joy of the fairy. It was subdued. She walked to the window. It's very quiet." "Yes," Elias said. "I pay for the quiet." She looked at him. "This is where you and Alara were going to come." "No," Elias said. We were going to climb the hill in the park, the one by the reservoir. We were going to bring a blanket and watch the lights come on. Why don't we go there?" It's not safe, Mia. It's dark." "Is it not safe?" she asked, her blue eyes piercing. "Or is it just not your kind of place anymore?" He had no answer. She turned back to the window. This isn't the top of the world, Elias. This is just a tall box. It's lonely." She pressed her hand to the glass. "I want to see my mom." The words, so simple, so direct, cut through all his defenses. The list, the day, the magic. It was all for Anna. "Of course," Elias said, his throat tight. "Marcus, the hospital." Now, the Mount Sinai private wing was a different world from the Starlight Diner. It was all soft lighting, hushed voices, and the faint smell of lemon-scented cleaner. Dr. Alastair, a sharp man with kind eyes, met them at the entrance to the ICU. Mr. Thorne, the patient, Anna. She's stable. The embolism was severe, but we caught it. We've begun an aggressive treatment. She's sleeping, but she's holding her own. Can I see her? Mia whispered, clutching Elias's hand. She had taken it in the car, and neither of them had let go. For a moment, dear, the doctor said, his gaze softening as he looked at her. She's very tired. The room was dark, filled with the quiet, rhythmic beeping of machines. Anna looked impossibly small in the large hospital bed, her face waxy and pale, an oxygen mask over her mouth. Mia's grip on Elias's hand tightened until it was painful. She crept forward, inch by inch, until she was at the bedside. "Mommy?" she whispered. Anna's eyelids flickered. She stirred, her eyes opening, unfocused. "Mia," she breathed, her voice a dry rasp. You're safe." "I'm safe, Mommy," Mia said, her voice thick with tears she was refusing to shed. And we did it." Anna's brow furrowed. "Did? What, baby?" "The list," Mia said, her voice growing stronger. "We did the perfect day. Elias and me. We ate pancakes as big as our heads, Mommy. And I rode the wind on the ferry. And we rode the painted horses, and there were bad men with cameras, but Elias scared them away. He was like Batman, and we told a secret to the lion." Anna's gaze drifted, finding Elias, who was standing in the shadows by the door. A flicker of something, a weak smile, touched her lips. You did that," she whispered, looking at him. Elias stepped forward into the dim light. "We did," he said, his voice rough. She was very brave." "And now," Mia said, her voice dropping, "we're at the last one. Watch the city sleep from the top of the world." She pointed to the small square window at the end of the room. It looked out over the east side, a tapestry of glittering lights. "We're here, Mommy. We're at the top of the world, and we're watching it sleep. All of us." Anna's eyes filled with tears which spilled over, tracing paths down her temples. My brave girl," she whispered. My storyteller." She looked at Elias. Thank you." Her eyes fluttered, and she was asleep again, the steady beep of the heart monitor the only sound. Mia just stood there, watching her mother. She didn't cry. She just watched. Elias stood next to her, and they both looked out the small square window. It wasn't the 80th floor, 360-degree view. It was a partial view, obstructed by another wing of the hospital. But as they stood there in the quiet, sterile room, watching the endless stream of headlights, the pinpricks of light from 1,000 other windows, 1,000 other lives, it did indeed feel like the top of the world. The day was over. The list was complete. Mia fell asleep in a chair pulled up next to her mother's bed, her small hand clutching Anna's limp one. Elias stood in the hallway talking to Dr. Alastair. What is the prognosis?" "The real one." The doctor sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Mr. Thorne, her cancer is advanced. Stage 4. This embolism. It was a complication, but it's not the primary threat. With aggressive treatment, the best treatment, which you've authorized, we can buy her time, maybe a year. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. But cure is not a word I can use." Elias felt the cold marble of his penthouse in his stomach. A year. 2. This perfect day. It wasn't a magic cure, it was a memory. It was a down payment on a future of grief. "I see," he said. Continue everything. Whatever it costs. I don't care. Give her that time." "Of course, Mr. Thorne." The doctor paused. And the girl? She'll stay with me, Elias heard himself say. For now, I have staff. She'll be looked after, until Anna is well enough to come home. Home? I'll arrange a new apartment. Something. Closer. With a nurse. Very generous, sir. It's not generous, Elias snapped. It's necessary. He went back to the room. He looked at Mia, her small face peaceful in sleep, her blonde hair haloed by the dim light. He had given her one day, and in doing so, he had just inextricably bound his life to hers. He needed to know. He needed to know the truth. Not the story he'd told himself for 25 years. The real one. He went back to his penthouse in the early hours of the morning, leaving Marcus to stand guard outside Anna's door. He didn't sleep. He sat at his vast, empty desk, the silver-leaf book open in front of him. He looked at the name. Ilara Vance. He had a name. And he had a fortune that could find anyone. He called his private investigation team the best in the world, men who normally track down corporate spies and hidden assets. I have a name, he said, his voice a low growl. Ilara Vance, last known address, an apartment in Astoria. It burned down in 1999. I was told she died. I want to know if that's true, and if it's not. I want to know where she is. I want to know everything, and I want to know by morning. The sun was rising, painting the city in shades of rose and gray, when his phone chimed. It was an email, a single encrypted file. He opened it. It was a report. Ilara Vance. Deceased was not at the top. Alive was. She hadn't died in the fire. The report said she had been rescued, treated for smoke inhalation. The pregnancy had been lost. Due to the smoke. Due to the stress. She had tried to contact him. The report had phone logs, dozens of calls to his new company in California. All intercepted by his new, efficient assistant. All logged as fan or personal plea. None of them had ever reached him. He had been so busy. He had been so important. She had stopped calling. She had moved. She had gone back to school. She had become a professor, Dr. Ilara Vance. She taught, of all things, folklore and mythology at a small college in Vermont. There was an address. He stared at the screen, the words blurring through a sudden, hot, shameful film. She hadn't left him. He had left her. His grief, his monument, his entire lonely life. It was all built on a lie. A lie he had been too arrogant, too busy, too cowardly to ever question. He thought of his words to the paparazzi. You'll have to live with the fact that you stole this day. He was the thief. He had stolen a life. He looked at the phone. He looked at the address. He looked at the silver leaf book. And for the first time in 25 years, Elias Thorne, the man who had everything, knew exactly what he had to do. He flew to Vermont in his helicopter, the same one Mia had called cheating. He landed in a snowy field next to a small clapboard house. He walked up the path, his heart a cold stone in his chest. He knocked. The door opened. And there she was. She was the same. And she was completely different. Her hair, the color of syrup, was streaked with gray. She had laugh lines around her eyes. She wore a thick wool sweater and jeans. She was beautiful. She looked at him and her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a shock that was so profound it was almost silent. Elias, she breathed, his name, on her lips, after all this time. Ilara, he said. His voice was a wreck. He couldn't form the words, the apology, the explanation. The excuse. He had no excuse. So he held it out. The book. The silver leaf glinting in the cold Vermont sun. She stared at it, and then, her eyes, those same bright, intelligent eyes, filled with tears. She didn't take the book. She just looked at him, at the man he had become, the tailored suit, the haunted eyes. You kept it, she whispered. I thought I lost it, he said, his voice breaking. I thought I lost you. In the fire. They told me. You never came, she said. The words not an accusation, just a statement of fact. A fact that had defined both of their lives. You never came. I know, he choked out. Elara, he couldn't say, sorry. The word was too small. It was an insult. I'm here now. She looked at him for a long, long time, the snow falling softly around them. Why? She asked. Why now, Elias, after all this time? And so he told her. He told her everything. About the girl on the stock exchange floor. About the dying mother. About the list. About the pancakes and the ferry and the lions. He told her about Mia. When he was finished, the silence stretched again. Elara looked down at the snow on her porch. A perfect day, she said softly. We were such children. So full of, hope, Elias finished for her. We were full of hope. She finally looked up and her gaze was clear. The shock was gone, replaced by a deep, profound, and ancient sadness. She's not gone then, the baby. What? Elias was stunned. The report. It said, the fire. The fire took a lot, Elias, she said, her voice impossibly gentle. But it didn't take her. He took her. The man I married, a good man, a kind man. He adopted her. He raised her as his own. He died. 3 years ago. Elias felt the world disintegrate. He gripped the porch railing. She's alive? My daughter? She's our daughter, Elara said softly. Her name is Sarah. She's 24. She's a musician. In Portland. He stared at her, his mind a howling void. A daughter. Oh, a grown woman. He had a daughter. I didn't tell her, Elara said, her voice quick, defensive. She thinks her adoptive father. She thinks it was better. You were a name in a newspaper, Elias. A ghost. I did what I thought was right. I know, Elias said, sinking onto the porch step, the cold seeping through his suit. You did. You survived. And I ran. He buried his face in his hands. The sobs that came were not the elegant, controlled tears of a movie. They were the ugly, racking, painful sobs of a man who had just realized his entire life was a wasteland. A profound, glittering, empty, lonely mistake. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Elara. She was sitting next to him on the cold step. It wasn't all a mistake, Elias, she said, as if reading his mind. You built things. You became. I became a monster, he whispered, his voice thick. No, she said. You became a man. A very, very rich one. A small smile touched her lips. And now, a little girl with a list has brought you home. He looked up at her. What do I do? Well, she said, standing up and pulling him to his feet. First, I think, you come inside, and you have a cup of tea, and you tell me about this, Mia. Months passed. The world turned. Anna did not get better, but she did not get worse. The time Elias had bought her it was time. She was moved from the hospital to a bright, beautiful apartment near the park, with a full-time nursing staff and a view of the trees. Elias had saved her library. He had bought the building, renovated it, and endowed it, renamed it the Anna and Mia Reading Center. It was a haven, full of light and books and comfortable chairs. Anna, on her good days, would go and sit, watching the children read. Mia was thriving. She was enrolled in the best school in the city. She split her time. Some nights she stayed in the spare room at Anna's apartment, but most nights she stayed in the vast, sterile penthouse on the 80th floor. It wasn't sterile anymore. There was a bright pink bicycle in the hallway. There were drawings of pancakes and lions and boats taped to the refrigerator. There was life. Elias learned to be. Not a father, not a dad. He was. Elias. He was the one who checked her homework. He was the one who listened to her chatter about her day. He was the one who was just there. He had met his daughter, Sarah. It had been awkward and painful and wonderful. He flew to Portland. He sat in a smoky club and watched her play, a fiery, passionate woman with his eyes in Alara's hair. He hadn't told her who he was. Not yet. Alara had advised against it. She's a life, Elias, not a secret to be told. Just be in her world. For a while. Let her know you. Then we tell her. So he was. A patron. He funded her album. He talked to her. About music. About life. He was learning. He was repairing. One cold afternoon in December, he was in the new Reading Center. It was full of children, the sound of laughter, and pages turning. He was sitting in a small, child-sized chair, Mia on his lap, reading a story to a group of rapt kids. He was wearing a sweater, a thick wool, lumpy sweater. His tie was gone. His hair was messy. He was in the middle of a sentence about a dragon when he looked up. Alara was standing in the doorway. She was smiling, not a sad smile. A real one. She had flown in. She was here. Anna, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, saw her, and she smiled too. A weak but genuine smile of welcome. Mia scrambled off his lap. "Alara!" she yelled, and she ran, launching herself into Alara's arms. You came? I came," Alara said, hugging her, her eyes meeting Elias's over Mia's blonde hair. Elias closed the book. He stood up, his knees cracking. He walked over to them, to his. He didn't know what to call it. This strange, broken, beautiful family. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied. She reached out, and she didn't take his hand. She fixed his collar. A simple, domestic, intimate gesture. You missed a spot. Shaven," she said, her thumb brushing his jaw. He hadn't shaved. Not perfectly. Not his usual immaculate grooming. He had been in a hurry. To get Mia to school. To live. I know," he said, his voice rough. He looked at Mia, who was beaming, holding Alara's hand. He looked at Anna, who was watching them, her eyes bright with a fierce, quiet peace. He looked at Alara, her face, the one he had thought was a ghost, now so real, so present. The silver leaf book was on the shelf behind him. It wasn't a plan for a day. It wasn't a monument to a ghost. It was a beginning. A beginning he had almost missed. He reached out, and he took Alara's free hand. And in the middle of a library, surrounded by children and books, and the two women who had, in their own ways, saved his life, Elias Thorne, he held on.